What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well for you. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you've been enjoying the MLB trade deadline. Obviously, what we're here to discuss, we are here to talk about our Dallas Cowboys, your Dallas Cowboys, my Dallas Cowboys. Tuesday's practice wrapped up, the sixth one of training camp for the Dallas Cowboys, and we have some. It's been long enough. We're almost a week in, almost 7 practices in, and so we've got a lot of data to kind of mine through and a lot of information to kind of let sit and marinate and really just kind of think on. And that's what we're about to do. Lord King 83 says, "What up, RJ? What is up to you, Lord King 83? I hope your Tuesday is going well." By the way, this is our first of 2 live shows that we'll be having here today on Tuesday on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. In case you are unaware, every single Tuesday we are live at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That's the most I can offer you. For our Blog on the Boys Roundtable, it'll be myself and 5 others kind of kicking the can around when it comes to various different Dallas Cowboys subjects. We're live, of course, every single day here, you and I, on BTB Daily every afternoon in the weekdays. But yeah, so we'll be kicking the can around tonight. If we are kicking it around, I think we'll be doing better than Jonathan Garibay and Lareem Hairulahu. Tuesday was a tough day for the Dallas Cowboys kickers. Zachary Maldonado, what's up, my man? Says, hope the little one's doing well. He is. Our son, my wife and I's son, doing very well. He has learned to scream, which is very fun, in case you were wondering. But Tuesday, a rough day for the Dallas Cowboys kickers. And I think we're at a point now, and kicker is one of those places where we're starting to have some of our priors be confirmed by the Dallas Cowboys, right? Some of the things that we thought, some of the things that we expected, some of the things that some of the issues that we had with this team coming into training camp, the issues we had all off season long. In case you're wondering, Jonathan Garibay went 6 for 8, while Lareem Hairulahu went 3 for 8. This was to start the practice, by the way. Lareem Hairulahu did miss 4 straight field goals. That's the kicker who's been doing better for the Cowboys, in case you were just landing on this conversation. But that was the kind of warm-up phase of the kicking competition. And this thing, the fact that it's a competition in and of itself is frustrating, because this was supposed to be Jonathan Garabay's job to lose. But Tuesday did not bring the results that we see. Christopher Summers says that happens. Cowboys always drop the ball and getting the right kicker. Those were the results. Like I said, Garibay 6 of 8 and Hairulahu 3 of 8. The dog is barking in the background, it seems. But that was just the warm-up phase. They did also have a kicking competition or a kicking sequence throughout Mike McCarthy's famed Mojo Moments, and they did not go well. The two, I'm talking about Jonathan Garibay, rookie undrafted free agent at Texas Tech, and Lareem Hairulahu, technically the veteran, who again spent 1 game on the Cowboys roster last year, went 1 for 6 in Mojo Moments for the Dallas Cowboys. And if you somehow do not know, Mojo Moments are basically what Mike McCarthy refers to as kind of in-game, epic moments, creating atmosphere, creating tension, creating would-be circumstances that the Cowboys will ultimately find themselves in throughout the regular season. And so this is, as high stakes as it can get throughout camp, and that they would combine to go 1 for 6 in Mojo Moments is not something that makes us happy. It is oddly disheveling. It is oddly unsettling. That is not great. In case you're wondering, Lareem Hairulahu had the 1 make of the 2. Jerry Jones spoke after practice was over and said that kicker struggles do not bother him. And I'm being totally serious here. I'm not making this up, because of how the wind contributed. All right, the wind. So I think Storm from the X-Men was out in Oxnard, California, just conjuring up some difficult environmental circumstances for these kickers. And this is lame. And I know that people think that like right now times are negative, times are down for the Dallas Cowboys. It's because of stuff like this that it's difficult to look past what the team is doing. It's difficult to believe them in what they're saying. You cannot sit here in true objective logic and say, you know what, we're good. It's just the wind. You know what, dude? You know what, guys? There's going to be some wind in some of the places that you play this season. There's going to be some wind. You cannot just design a bubble for all of your games to happen in. And so that's a really, really unsettling thing, what is happening with the Dallas Cowboys kicker situation. And I maintain, the Cowboys handled this situation very poorly over the offseason. It's what we've been talking about, the kind of way they have not hedged their bets. What I'm about to tell you is not hyperbole. It is not me exaggerating. It is not me flustered because the dog is barking in the background, all right? Last year, the Dallas Cowboys employed the worst kicker in the NFL when it came to extra point conversion percentage. I know that we all sit here and say Greg Zuerlein is the worst. No. Literally from a measurable standpoint, Greg Zuerlein had the worst completion percentage, not at field goals, at extra points. That is the kicker who the Dallas Cowboys rode with all season long. He costed them against the Buccaneers. He costed them against the Raiders. Maybe it's something to do with pirate mascots. And they allowed that. And their big plan, their big sort of fix for that was to almost bring Greg Zuerlein back before he wound up the New York Jets, by the way, and then to not draft anybody, to sign an undrafted free agent and Jonathan Garibay, to basically effectively hand him the job and to bring in a kicker in Lareem Hairulahu, who was on the roster last year for some mild level of competition right before training camp started. And so, people, we've all heard the expression, right? You get what you pay for, whatever. You're getting what you paid for, Cowboys. What did you expect? Did you just expect to, look under one rock and kind of, find the magic answer, the magic anecdote? It reminds me, I love golf. And, when I was a kid and I would play golf and I would just hit these terrible shots and I would lose my ball, I'd walk up to the green, walk up to the pin, look down in the cup, and I'd wonder, did I make it? Am I just this, insanely gifted golfer that I just made it and I didn't even know it? That's how it feels like the Cowboys are operating with some things. And one of those other things is wide receiver. We sat here yesterday on Monday, talked about the James Washington injury. It was confirmed. It is a Jones fracture in his foot. He's going to be out 6 to 10 weeks. If he is out the full 10 weeks, he will miss the first 5 games of the season for the Dallas Cowboys. Michael Gallup is at the very least going to miss the first game. If he's on the PUP list at the beginning of the season, he himself will also miss the first 4 games at minimum. That is still a bit of an if proposition. Jerry Jones, finally, the first time he spoke since this happened on Tuesday afternoon, and he was asked if there was a need at wide receiver. Here's what he had to say. Not at all. Let's get these guys the incentive, these young receivers. There's no urgency looking for a veteran receiver. I agree that there are things to like, right? We know that TJ Vasher has been playing well. We've seen Kevontae Turpin start to kind of pop, although this dude wasn't even on the team a week and a half ago, and now all of a sudden he's a big part of the offensive play-in at wide receiver. Simi Fehoko had a great moment on Tuesday. I don't want to overlook that. Simi Fehoko getting in the highlight game here. So Simi Fehoko is coming along. That's great. Something has to happen. We're at a place here with the Cowboys and with the wide receiver position and the kicker position and the swing tackle position where something has to happen. You're going to some answer has to be found one way or another. There's no more kind of just I don't know, we'll figure it out. No, you're at camp. You're a week into this thing. You have to start figuring answers out. We actually, when it comes to these positions, and I've only named 3, we currently have more questions than we do answers, right? We started this with a lot of questions, and the list of questions has only grown. The list or the level of concern has only grown. The level of doubt has only grown. And yes, Simi Fehoko had a nice day on Tuesday. Great. TJ Vasher had a nice catch last week. Great. Noah Brown has had a nice camp. Awesome. But week 1, the Cowboys have to go play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who amongst us is super confident in a wide receiver core. No offense to CeeDee Lamb. He's awesome and amazing, but he can't carry all that on his own, right? I mean, it's CeeDee Lamb, and who's your secondary wide receiver? Noah Brown? That's who you're trotting out on the outside right now? If that's that's what we're talking about right now. And so we're talking about CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown, Jalen Tolbert, who's coming along as well. But all these things are these coming alongs. No, you're not in a position where you can be coming along. You need to be in a position where you have arrived. And that's not the case right now. And so it's one thing to go out and have your practice, and nobody's saying that you had to go out and get a receiver yesterday, although you should have. We have a video up on our channel, by the way, of 5 receivers who the Dallas Cowboys should consider. I'll tell you the list that we came up with, and it's very popular amongst Cowboys content creators. Will Fuller, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, T.Y. Hilton, Odell Beckham Jr. All of them make sense for different reasons to some degree. But I don't know how you can look at that list and thumb your nose at it with $22 million in salary cap space and be like, we're good. We're good. We don't need anybody. We got Simi Fehoko. We got Noah Brown. We got TJ Vasher. All right. We got, have you seen what we're working with here? Have you seen Dennis Houston? All right, and that, it's awful because nobody wants to sit here and not praise those players. They're having awesome training camps, but I think they're having awesome camps relative to expectation around those specific players. You cannot expect that group to carry you at wide receiver. We all watched this team make this mistake 4 years ago. Now, granted, they have CeeDee Lamb on their roster. They did not have a player of that caliber 4 years ago when they went by the wide receiver committee approach. But this is not enough. Not in today's NFL. Look at your week one opponent. The Buccaneers, Chris Godwin is currently ahead of Michael Gallup as far as timeline to recovery. They've got Mike Evans. They've got Scotty Miller. And they said, you know what? More that we want to add. We're going to bring in Julio Jones. Yes, he's a little bit washed, but still, he can help us. The Cowboys have the resources available. They have the need. The math checks out. If you have the need, you have the resources, you do it. It's very simple. I mean, it's 2 + 2. It's 1 + 1. It's not a complicated sort of thing. But I digress. Let's move on. So we've covered the kickers. We've covered the wide receivers. Let's talk about a tight end. Peyton Hendershot, people getting in the mix. That's what we want to see. We want to see some tight ends coming along as well because we don't know what the future of this position has in store either. Look, ultimately, I think the tight end group is fine. You get Dalton Schultz, John McEwen, Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot. You're good to go there. That's awesome. Speaking of tight ends, let's go back. Let's go up in the depth chart. Let's go to Dalton Schultz. Dak Prescott hitting him early on. I think we're going to see this a lot this season, especially if there are so many question marks encircling the wide receiver group. And maybe Dalton Schultz is a reason why the Cowboys feel like they don't have to add, right? Maybe they feel like we've got CeeDee Lamb, we've got Dalton Schultz, we've got 2 primary pass-catching options for the Dallas Cowboys. Plus, RJ, you were just sitting here, you were talking about how much you like our tight end group. We can rock out in 12 personnel, baby. We'll have Dalton Schultz and Sean McEwen on the field at the same time. 3 wide receivers, 11 personnel. That's old school. We don't need that happening here. We're good. And sure, that's one way you can go about this, and you can kind of survive that way. But the point is, our point, if you are like me and you're saying, Cowboys, what are you doing? Why aren't you bringing anybody in? Is you have the resources. You have the ability to do this. And yes, you have to pay that money, but you can fit it under your salary cap. It was so important to the Cowboys to create salary cap space, and we've all tried to understand why. If you're saving all that money for a rainy day, it is pouring outside. So go out, spend, get yourself some depth to come on in and help you out. That's just kind of the way it goes. JJ the Mime says, why do I feel like they are trying to set Dak up for failure, RJ? Look, JJ, I'm not somebody, I've never bought into conspiracy theories. That's never been, how I've operated as a Cowboys fan. I've never entertained the idea that the Cowboys care more about making money than they do about winning. Or a very popular take this offseason is, they're just setting this up for Sean Payton. I have a difficult time squaring things like that in my mind because it just doesn't make sense to me. As true as that is, everything I just said, I have an even more difficult time refuting those things, right? Like they're doing so many things that all of us find to be illogical that it's difficult to believe that there isn't some ulterior plan, right? It's either some sort of conspiracy theory or they just really believe this. They really believe that they don't need the help that they can go out and get. And that would be more concerning to me. I would actually be more concerned if they truly believed this in their heart of hearts as opposed to some grand conspiracy theory that was making all of us waste this time. Raul Duke says, so long as it moves the sticks instead of Zeke for 2 up the gut on first, I'll take it. I mean, Raul's talking about however, look, I agree with Raul. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Raul. Pick up, the old adage is pick up 4 yards at a time, right? You're picking up 4 yards at a time. You're going to move, and convert. But you need the big plays. You need the explosive plays. Yes, if you average 4 yards per play, in a mathematical equation, you win. But this isn't that way anymore. The likelihood of you sustaining these 14 play drives over and over and over and over again is extremely difficult. What about the plays where you're sacked for a 5-yard loss? What about the plays where you throw an interception, you have a fumble? Like that's not factoring in any sort of ridiculousness that the NFL offers, which we know we see year in and year out. Donnie King, what's up, Donnie, says, on the receiver note, I would love to see Turpin putting on the 20 to 25 pounds of muscle. I can see him as a Tavon Austin 2.0. Cavante, I have no idea what to expect from Cavante Turpin. He seems like he's really going to help in the return game, which is awesome. But if we're at a place where we already have to, and I don't mean this in any way negatively about Cavante Turpin. He seems like he's going to help this football team. But if we're at a place already, again, he's been on this team for a week and a half. He doesn't even have his own jersey number as of yet. He's technically sharing it with Jordan Lewis, right? If we're already at the place where like Cavante Turpin is one of the most important offensive skill players on this team, like we have reached a bad place very quickly. And so that's just, that's kind of that. But on the subject of Zeke, I know, Raul, you had the joke about Zeke, but Zeke, had an okay day, had an okay moment. Zeke Elliott getting in the mix, everybody. It's so difficult, honestly, to fully contextualize how good Zeke looks. Part of his game is his physicality and his ability to break tackles. And so, those things are difficult to read. He did have this catch that was nice. If you want to see a highlight of Zeke Elliott catch the ball, we got a complaint that we weren't playing enough highlights. So here's Zeke Elliott making a catch. Here's a highlight for you. Use Zeke Elliott in the passing game. I mean, we clamor, use Tony Pollard in the passing game. Use Zeke Elliott. Use them in the passing game. We would love. Look, I know people think that there's this like sector of Cowboys fans that don't like Zeke Elliott. We love Zeke Elliott. Everybody loves Zeke Elliott. He's a great player relative to what he can do now. But use him in the passing game. We've been screaming that for years. Let's see here. Ortho Ram 4078 says, Jerry, spend the money, get a receiver, please. Jerry, get a receiver, get a swing tackle, get a kicker. Any of these things like. The bar is low. You gave us the throwback helmets. Respect. We needed that. We really, really needed that. But now we're just asking you for one of these three things. Let's see here. Jameer says, I heard Dennis Houston has been balling. Totally. Yeah. I mean, he's been having a good camp. But like, are we really like that? That's what we need to kind of like contextualize what balling means. Is he balling the way CeeDee Lamb is balling? No, but he shouldn't be. You know what I mean? Is he balling the way, somebody in his position should be balling? Yeah, absolutely. But what does that mean? How does that really help us? I mean, does that do we feel like, well, the wide receiver problem is solved? No. And to be fair, I don't think we felt that way before James Washington got hurt. This is a receiver group that needed help as a Monday morning. That need has only been magnified and exacerbated in the aftermath of the James Washington injury. And Dennis Houston, all due respect to him, is not going to fix that on his own. Let's see here. Let's move. What other highlights do we have? Let's talk some in the trenches. Let's do some in the trenches work here. Tristan Hill, on the subject of Zeke Elliott, kind of had a nice moment against Zeke. I'm going to play that again because I know it kind of goes by quickly. Tristan Hill meeting Zeke Elliott behind the line of scrimmage. A nice tackle for loss. Good for you, Tristan. Tristan's in a really interesting spot because I think, he falls into a really kind of simple box where people love to say, well, the current regime didn't draft Tristan Hill. And that's true. The Mike McCarthy regime didn't draft Tristan Hill. That is obvious. He was drafted in 2019. He's had a rough career so far. I've personally said many times that I feel like we don't credit Tristan Hill enough for the beginning part of his 2020 season. I thought he played, again, contextually very well. He tore his ACL in the same game that Dak Prescott was injured against the New York Giants, and it just never has worked for him. And there's now suddenly a lot of bodies at defensive tackle, right? We're talking about Neville Gallimore, Osa Digizua, Quinn Bohanna. Now everybody loves John Ridgeway. And so like you can kind of, and obviously Carlos Watkins kind of floats in. So you can see Tristan Hill kind of being the odd man out. But speaking of John Ridgeway, welcome to the NFL, John. Why don't you meet Zach Martin? You got to go through it. You just got to go through it. That's the best guard in the NFL. I know Quentin Nelson exists, but that's one of the best guards in the NFL, and Zach Martin. And so it's a learning experience, needless to say. Let's see here. Donnie King says more trench videos featuring Tyler Smith putting people in their place, like what he did with that Hill. That was fun to watch. That nastiness. Lord King 83 says, how is Ridgeway doing? Well, we saw the highlight there. Not a great moment for John Ridgeway, but coming along. I mean, we've talked so much about in the offseason, in the lead up to all this, and in the aftermath of the NFL draft, about how John Ridgeway and Tyler Smith at that point too kind of fit this mold that the Cowboys are looking for. When it comes to changing the attitude, how they were too soft against the 49ers. And so I think that we're seeing that a little bit. But obviously he's got a little bit of ways to go from an on the field perspective. So I don't think we need to draw any hard conclusions when it comes to John Ridgeway quite yet. I think we're still too early in that process. And I think to kind of get to a grander perspective on what we've seen, yes, we are 6 practices in. Yes, we have seen two padded practices. And so it is still difficult to come away with hard, conclusions on a lot of different things. But that's why I think we're at a place where we can start to confirm some priors and maybe, disregard some priors, right? I think some priors that we can disregard are things like, well, is CeeDee Lamb really going to take the step and become the alpha? We can disregard that. CeeDee's doing everything that you kind of want to see. Is Dalton Schultz going to be able to be just as effective of a pass catcher? He's taking care of that. Is Micah Parsons going to be able to do it again? He's taking care of those things. Is Trayvon Diggs going to be able to do it again? Jaron Kearse, you get what I'm saying? There are some questions that, while we can't totally answer because it's just training camp, I think we're starting to get to a place where we can feel better about. But we're at this other place on the other end of that spectrum. So we went from super positive now to call it super negative, where it's difficult. It's difficult to answer some questions. It's difficult to understand why the Cowboys are. And look, Jerry believes in playing poker, which was evidenced by the way he explained the Dan Quinn, Mike McCarthy thing. We have some Dan Quinn stuff to get to in a little bit too, by the way. So maybe this is Jerry playing poker. Maybe Jerry doesn't want to say that they're looking into a receiver option or a kicker or whatever, blah blah blah, because they're trying to lock a deal down. I hope that's the case. I hope we're getting bamboozled. I hope Jerry's lying through his teeth. I hope that they are on the phones or sending text messages or sliding into DMs, because there's no doubt about it. We're not at a place anymore where we're being silly or dramatic or having fun. The Cowboys need some help at certain positions. The top 3 right now through 6 practices of training camp are wide receiver, swing tackle, and kicker. Kicker is important. I know people think it's silly, but kicker is an important thing. Let's see here. Mike McCarthy is at the podium now. That was something that was interesting, by the way, is if you haven't been paying attention to this stuff, Mike McCarthy has generally had his press conferences throughout camp before practice. That's generally been how it's always gone, especially since in the Mike McCarthy era, having the practices early. Jason Garrett used to have the practices later in the afternoon. But today, Tuesday, at least, the Cowboys flip that around a little bit here. So Cowboys held their practice. Now Mike McCarthy is speaking. So we'll see here. We're obviously live. If you're watching our video later, you won't get to be part of the live audience. Kind of hurts my feelings. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe here to the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. We are live every single weekday. That's the plan for the regular season, so we can hang out all the time. But let's see if Mike McCarthy has anything interesting to say. So Cager, I think it's Codger fan. Good day for the Dodgers, by the way. Joey Gallo. Hey. Good day. Anyway, says it's Jake Ferguson on vacation. Haven't heard a word about him. Nothing really, kind of popping around Jake Ferguson. But this was interesting, and I am excited to see what Mike McCarthy has to say here, because Jeremy Sprinkle was not at practice, reportedly not at practice on Tuesday. And no offense to Jeremy Sprinkle, but I don't think anybody cares. But along those lines, Jabril Cox was not in practice on Tuesday, and I'm very curious to see if Mike McCarthy offers any sort of explanation for that, and that's where just kind of paying attention here. Okay, we've got some McCarthy quotes to roll through here. First of all, Jerry Jones noted that the Cowboys have hired a new head of their PR staff, Ted Carper. He previously worked as the Cleveland Cavaliers chief communications officer. Obviously, I'm assuming you are all aware of the Richard Dalrymple story over the offseason, so the Cowboys had that void to fill. Let's see, moving on, though. Mike McCarthy was asked about the wide receiver position. Obviously, we discussed that a little bit earlier, what Jerry Jones had to say. Mike McCarthy's quote, courtesy of Patrick Walker, new DallasCowboys.comer. Patrick Walker, shout out to our friend, Voice of the Star. You have a 90-man roster by design. We were wanting to give the young guys an opportunity. I think you'll see these young guys improve once we get past The installation, as far as player acquisition, it's TBD, but not a focus. Dude, no, enough. Like, why are we doing this? Again, like, unless you're bluffing all of us, unless you're trying to play some poker, unless you're trying to just kind of keep the status quo on the surface, this idea that you got to give, the young guys chance. What are these young guys? And I hate that the Cowboys are making us have this conversation this way, but you're believing in some first and second year undrafted free agents. Those are the young guys that you're super excited to give opportunities to. You have a franchise quarterback and a franchise-altering defensive player. You play in arguably the worst division in the NFL, although the AFC South is up there. You play in the weaker conference. The time is now. The path is clear. There is no resistance relative to seasons past. You don't have the time for these undrafted free agent receivers to start, clicking and getting moving. The time is now, so you cannot be saying, you know what, let's just see. All right, let's just see how Dennis Houston comes along. No respect to Dennis Houston, but you cannot do that. You're at a place where you need some help. You need some bodies. You need that help now. Let's see here. Mike McCarthy talking more about this says, we talk about growth. We talk about draft and development. Well, here it is. Yeah, cool. You drafted Jalen Tolbert. That's awesome. We're excited about him. We buy that. We're with you on that. But you have to have more than that. This was arguably the deepest position on the Dallas Cowboys roster a year ago, right? When we had Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Wilson. Then you still had Noah Brown and Simi Fehoko. It is arguably the most shallow position on the roster right now. It's amazing how that has flipped from one year to another. Again, just reading more here. Mike McCarthy had a quote about Dennis Houston, actually. He's really jumped out. You could see it in the OTAs. He's made a lot of plays. Everybody, both sides of the ball, was impressed. History will tell you. Let's see what he does in pads, and he's had 2 solid days. Yes, cool, Mike McCarthy. He has been fine. We're cool. We're in on Dennis Houston. We'll all buy Dennis Houston jerseys, but you do not have to do it this way. You can help yourself by bringing in more talent, which is something, for whatever reason, the Cowboys have decided they do not want to do. And I think we could all sit here and accept it, right? We could all kind of like talk to ourselves about this and say, you know what? They don't have any salary cap space. What can you do? They're up against it, right? They have nothing to really, no moves to make. They have no cards to play, so they just got to kind of go at it here. You have $22 million in salary cap space. That's just sitting there. It's just collecting dust. Use it, burn it. Shout out to Dennis Houston, though. I mean, cool for him that he got a shout out from Mike McCarthy. While we wait for McCarthy to say something else interesting, potentially, one thing I wanted to get to before we got out of here today had to do with Dan Quinn and actually Mike McCarthy. Actually, before we get there, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Nashawn Wright, who I don't think that we're talking about, just kind of other players. Nashawn Wright has had a few nice moments. I'm looking for his highlight, and I think, talking about deep positions, corner might be the deepest position on the team. The secondary as a whole is low-key deep. Good for Nashawn Wright. Happy to see him, thrive. Happy to see him having success. But, okay, Dan Quinn. I want to get to this before we got out of here. By the way, Mike McCarthy said that Noah Brown is having the best camp he's seen him have. Cool. Again, fine. But you know who else would have a good camp? Will Fuller. You know who else would have a good camp? Emmanuel Sanders. You know who else would inspire you but not have a camp? Obviously, is Odell Beckham Jr. Those people can have good camps too. But this was very interesting. Dan Quinn sat down with USA Today and said that he would have left the Cowboys if Mike McCarthy wanted him to. Here is the exact quote. I will read it for you, although I know that you can read, but I just want to put my own audio spin on it. Again, Jory Epstein of USA Today wrote this. Go read it, please. We retweeted it over at the Blog on the Boys Twitter account. Instead, when that speculation mounted, talking about the speculation of Dan Quinn being the Cowboys head coach, we all know that story, blah, blah, blah. Amid Quinn's interview circuit when he was interviewing for other head coaching jobs around the NFL, blah, 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 Quinn went directly to McCarthy. So this is setting up Dan Quinn going to talk to Mike McCarthy after being courted to be a head coach in the NFL and all the hoopla surrounding him, maybe, taking over the Dallas Cowboys job if they fired Mike McCarthy. Anyway, that's the setup here. And this is Dan Quinn talking. I was like, hey, man, let's talk about it and see what you think. Quinn said he told McCarthy, if it's easier for me to go, just say the word and I'm gone. Quinn says McCarthy paused. Then he kind of laughed and said, if this was 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah, it would help for you to go. But I don't want to say that right now because I think winning is better with you here. If it isn't obvious, that's Dan Quinn telling the story of what Mike McCarthy said, right? So Dan Quinn's telling us, telling Jory Epstein, telling USA Today, telling you and I that Mike McCarthy kind of laughed and said, if this was 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah, it would help for you to go, but I don't want to say that right now because I think winning is better with you here. So I find this all to be very interesting. I did a TikTok about this. I'm on TikTok at rj.ochoa. Post a lot of videos there, obviously, every day. Why is this coming up now? And I'm not like trying to, tinfoil hat, like suggest weird stuff's going on here, but who does this help? By this information being out here now, Mike McCarthy's already under the gun, right? Like we all know and can acknowledge that Mike McCarthy's in a really tough spot, right? There is no shortage of people who are being connected to Mike McCarthy's job. Sean Payton, I know the Miami Dolphins got fined for that and punished for that today. Sean Payton, Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, there are a lot of people who are seemingly in line to replace Mike McCarthy. So why throw this out there? Why throw this out there that, you told him that you would leave? And also, does that mean that Dan Quinn had a head coaching offer? Because we believe that, right? We don't know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. But did Dan Quinn have an offer to be a head coach for a different NFL team, obviously, and then turn it down? And again, no team is going to say, yeah, Dan Quinn turned us down. The Broncos aren't going to say Dan Quinn turned us down, so we went with Nathaniel Hackett instead. Did Dan Quinn have an offer and say no to them to stay with the Dallas Cowboys? That would be awesome, right? I would be super happy. You would be happy. Woo, go Cowboys, silver and blue, baby. But again, like that's just I mean, Dan Quinn's human. Dan Quinn wants to be a head coach, right? Like at some point in the future, right? Like that's totally fair and warranted. It's just a weird thing. I think that's a weird story to kind of come out. Who does it benefit for that story to come out now? I don't think it makes anybody look better. I don't think it makes anybody look bad. But I do think it's just kind of interesting that story would come out now. So whatever. But anyway, here we go. Oh my gosh. So we have an answer on a few players here. Let's see. Jake Ferguson, shout out. Where was the Codger fan asked about Jake Ferguson. Mike McCarthy said that he tweaked his hamstring at the beginning of practice. That's what happened to Jake Ferguson. Jeremy Sprinkle, his Achilles flared up. That is why he did not practice. And Jabril Cox, everybody take a deep breath, dinged his knee. And the Cowboys are being cautious due to the ACL injury from last year, obviously. But Jabril is expected to go in the next practice on Thursday. So, okay. I don't think there's anything worth panicking about there. But that's good to know. And you know what? Good for the Cowboys. Be smart about it. Like, we would love to see you be that smart and be that proactive in other team building ways. That's really the conversation that we're having here. So hopefully everybody gets to feeling better. That would be wonderful. By the way, Mike McCarthy did just speak about Deshaun Wright, saying he's all over the football and that Shawnee was an outstanding special teams player for them last year. Deshaun Wright did have a special teams touchdown for the Cowboys last year. Mike McCarthy addressing the wind, in case you got here late. Jerry Jones said, let's get this up here, that he was not worried about the kicker struggles because of the wind. All right, the almighty wind. Mike McCarthy said the wind was definitely a factor today, no question about it, but we wanted to put pressure on those guys. Okay, I'm with you. I'm down with that, right? Like I'm down to say, you know what? It's windy. Throw him out there. Let's see. It's 60 miles an hour outside. Throw him out there. I want to see him kicking a monsoon. I want to see him kick, when the water's coming sideways. Let's do it. Let's see what they got. Let's see how they can kick in these elements, because you never know what kind of game you're gonna, find yourself in. But maybe learn from it. Maybe take some data, mine some data. Just put the old thinking cap on, and then say, okay, I know there was wind, but there's going to be wind in Tennessee in December. There's going to be wind when we go to Philadelphia. If we have to go to Green Bay in the playoffs, there's going to be wind. There's wind everywhere, all right? You can't hide yourself from the wind. You can't just walk around with shields all the time. It's wild. It really is wild. He says, Mike McCarthy now, that he wants to make sure Lareem Hairulahu gets a fair crack at the kicking job. This is the kind of thing that, again, okay, cool, respect. Football's a meritocracy. Shout out, Nine God. But if you wanted to make sure he got a fair crack at it, why did you wait to sign him until right before you went to camp? If you're that passionate about Lareem Hairulahu, why did you? I mean, he's barely been on the team. That's just a weird way to put it to me. So those are my 2 cents. Lord King 83, appreciate you, says there's 8 likes and that ain't good. Show RJ and the boys some love and smash the like button if you can. Like, subscribe. I know that every person on the internet asks for those things, but it's because they matter. So I appreciate Lord King 83 for the love. In fact, we do this every day starting yesterday, so now this is officially a tradition. The BTB Daily, let me fix that here. I messed that up, so that was a really poor sort of delivery on the setup. The BTB Daily MVP for today, Tuesday, August 2nd, goes to Lord King 83. Thank you for the love. Thank all of you for joining our live show. In case you missed it or you're unaware or you forgot, I do this every single day. Every weekday afternoon, I am here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel talking about the latest and greatest in the world of our favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. I appreciate it. I love it when you join me to do that. If you can't, join the live show, we certainly appreciate if you come in after the fact. This is a YouTube exclusive. We have a lot of podcasts on the Blog on the Boys podcast network as well. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, whatever your preferred podcast platform is, and we have a lot of shows in one neat, tidy place for you, but this is just for the YouTube audience. We'll be doing these every single weekday. Like I said, we also have live shows after every Dallas Cowboys game. We'll have Madden simulations throughout the year, so if you can subscribe to the channel, that would make our hearts happy. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. On TikTok, as mentioned, RJ.Ochoa. If you want to email me, if you're living, in 2003 with your see-through big computer, because that's what we liked back then was see-through stuff. RJ.Ochoa at SBNation.com is the way you can do that. If you want to leave a comment here, we can get to those as well. But yeah, other than that, I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. And like I said, we'll also be here live for the BTB Roundtable at 7 p.m. Central Time tonight on Tuesday night, and then be back tomorrow for another roundabout, you and I. So thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time.